In this episode of NZ Business Owners, we talk about knowing your software. So Xero MYB, how can you actually use it to make tactical data-driven decisions? And then also understanding your numbers. I don't know anything about cash flow and how you meant to structure and what it's all called and what you should look for. So I decided to interview the vice president of the Bookkeeping Association, as well as Ignition's ranked her as one of the top 50 women in accounting. And she also got an award for the best trainer in the Bookkeeping Association. So if you want to learn about numbers, if you want to understand Xero, this is a good podcast for you. Okay, so Xero, I don't know anything about it. Is there like tiers and stuff, or do you just like, who should we use Xero? Or which one's your favorite actually? What's your favorite software?
Well, I couldn't possibly say what's my favorite. And to be fair, there's no one size fits all. Like they've all got their peculiarities, shall we say. Xero is probably the most popular for small business here in New Zealand anyway. But MYOB is pretty popular as well. They've got a couple different offerings, and to a lesser, Reckon is still there, but not very much. Used to be QuickBooks, but that's a long story. It's now Reckon. But Xero's probably the one that most small businesses own, although MYB, like you said, is up there as well.
What's wrong with some of them? Why do they not have all of it? Like, if you could make the perfect software, would you add to it?
Well, again, it depends on the business. So there's not like a one size fits all. There's not like one software that's going to suit every single business, which is why Xero's taken the approach, from what I understand, of having the basics. Well, not even the basics, they're pretty robust these days. But then if you want additional functionality like inventory management or advanced inventory management anyway, they have a small module, then you might look to go to another software product like Unleashed or Sin7 or something like that. If you're looking for job management, Xero does have Xero projects, but again, it's not purpose-built for the likes of tradies. So you might get something like Fugus or Tradeify or some of the other Xero add-ons. So there's not one size fits all. I mean, MYOB's got a couple different products, and like MYOB Account Writer or MYOB Business, they have got some job costings. It's just not like an easy conversation, to be honest. So it really depends on the business and what they're looking for. And then you can kind of go, well, based on that, then this is what I recommend.
Yeah, fair. Okay. Well, what about what's best practice for using Xero and what it's capable of? And when you go into a business, they're actually surprised that they're not using it in the way they should?
Yeah, that happens a lot actually, because Xero is so well known. And oftentimes it's, well, my mate said it was good, so I'm just using that. But without any proper training on all of the functionality and without talking to an expert who can delve into, well, what happens in your business and what outcome are you trying to get from your software? Like, what reporting are you trying to get? What information are you trying to get? That's the whole point of having accounting software and having a bookkeeper and accountant, is helping you to get the information that you need, that you can make really sound business decisions. You can't make that if you don't have the good financial data and the good business information. So that's where the business accounting systems come into play. It's like, so long as they're up to date, that's another matter, is what are you actually trying to get? What business information do you want? And how do we set up the product and the system or the combination of systems to get that out?
And like data-driven decision makes a lot of sense, because I have a bit of a problem where, like, when I work with people, I convince them to go my way instead of like we collectively try and find the truth. So data-driven decision sounds useful.
Yeah.
So what's the specifics with Xero? Like, you with a specific industry where the numbers help them make better decisions around their business. Like, have you got sort of an example of how you could do that for a type of industry?
So, I mean, there's probably plenty of examples, but you might look at, if you've got software that's giving you how much money you're making on a certain item or a certain division of your business, it might be completely different from what you think. So that often happens where you have a gut feel about where things are, but it's not until you actually get the numbers whether you know that you're correct or not. So just as an example, I have got a client who manufactures and imports and exports candles, and they make their own candles and they import their candles and they sell to the likes of restaurants and churches, and they do contract manufacturing as well. So they've got lots of different divisions of their business. They've got the contract manufacturing, they've got the selling to retail, etc. So they need to be able to know how much they're selling as a percentage of their entire sales to each of those divisions and how much margin that they're making on each of those divisions. That's just one very loose example. It's a bit more involved than that, but that's one example. You might have a tradesperson, for example, who is not really sure if they're making any money on a job because it all just goes into one big pot and all the expenses go into one big pot, and they're quoting based on what they think is good margins, but without actually having that data, they don't know whether or not they are actually making money on that job, whether they're quoting correctly, whether they're putting enough markup on their materials, whether they're putting enough markup on their labor, whether they're charging enough. So there's so many different ways that having the numbers and knowing your numbers can make. I mean, it's the backbone of a small business, of any business, is knowing the numbers. It tells the story of what's happening in the business in a multitude of different ways. And
Yeah.
you can get really detailed with it, or you can have an overview, and it depends on the size of business and the type of business where you go with that.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't gone to the whole business numbers part, but when we used to train sales team, we get them to track how many people stop, pitch, close, and the type of ejections they get through the day. And just by reading that without being there, you know exactly what went wrong. So like if they don't get enough stop to pitches, their rapport wasn't very good, they probably jump to the pitch. If they're getting certain types of ejections, like think about it, they're giving people the wrong kind of information, so they felt overwhelmed, so they had to go away and think about it.
Yeah.
Is it sort of important numbers to look at? I know it's hard for all industry, but you can pick one. But is there like best practice on what you should do each month, like forecasting, or you should look at these key metrics in the business? How do you decide?
So if you're going to be looking at some key reports every month, I would start with, and this sounds super obvious, start with the profit and loss report and the balance sheet. Those two reports together tell the story of the business. But then you also want to be looking at the accounts payable summary, aging summary, and the accounts receivable aging summary. Sometimes you might go, well, we seem to be making all this profit, but where's the money? We don't have any money in our bank account. And that's where the balance sheet and the P&L can help you to figure out where that's going wrong. You might have a bunch of people that are owing you money, and so that profit hasn't eventuated. You might have high loans, which all of the profit that is going out to pay loans. So there's lots of information that you can determine by that. Looking at the accounts payable and the accounts receivable numbers will tell you, are people paying you in a timely manner? And if not, then you might have to implement a better credit control process. And there's lots of ways that you can automate that too. But yeah, there's so many different variables when it comes to accounts and bookkeeping and knowing your numbers, that it really can pay to get an expert involved, either a bookkeeper or an accountant, to look at what's going on in your business and to ask questions so you can determine, where is it that the leak is happening, or where am I not making enough money, or where's my money going? Dude, where's my money?
Great movie. We should do a remake with like Bookkeepers. So let's go back a bit, because I don't actually, a lot of those things you just said, I don't even know how you would do that. So profit loss. So you're making money and you're losing money, and then you're trying to work out how that. So how do you set that up with Xero, and what is a profit loss statement like? What's in it?
So just in really basic accounting terms, and this is like accounting 101, so basic. So if there's any accountants and bookkeepers listening to this, just know, I know this is basic, but you have your revenue coming in, right? Your sales. And underneath that you have, we're talking on a profit and loss, underneath that you'll have cost of goods sold or cost of sales. Now that is anything that is directly attributable to the income. Like if you're making widgets and you're selling the widgets, all of the materials and the labor generally too would go into making up the cost of making that widget. The revenue less that cost of goods sold equals your gross profit. And your gross profit margin is the percentage of the revenue that you actually get to the profit that you make on that sale. And from that profit, you take out all of the fixed expenses or the overheads of the business, and you're left with net profit. So in its really basic form, you've got revenue less cost of goods sold equals gross profit, and less expenses and overheads equals net profit. Now, the gross profit as a percentage, like what percentage are you keeping of that revenue? Are you making of that revenue? If you sell a widget for $100, but it costs you $75 to make, you're only making 25%. If you sell it for $100 and it's costing you $25, then you're making 75%. So that number there is a really good metric, because even 1% can make quite a big difference to the bottom line. So gross profit percentage is a really good number to track.
Okay.
And then you also want to be tracking net profit too, because that's how much money like you're making profit after the expenses.
And then, so with these different softwares, MYOB, the QuickBook Remix, and then Xero, what is there like a dashboard or something, or is there like you need to feed in certain things? Like, what's sort of an overview of how to actually set up a profit loss?
Well, it comes with the package. So there's a whole bunch of reports that come with it, and profit and loss is one, balance sheet is another. There's just a raft of them. So you don't have to set anything up. What you might want to set up is the chart of accounts, which is all of the categories, if you like, of where you code stuff to, like revenue, cost of goods sales, rent, all of those things. They're called accounts, general ledger accounts. So where you can get some good reporting is just understanding what you're selling, what is the cost of selling that, what's the fixed cost, and setting up the chart of accounts appropriately, and potentially tweaking the P&L depending on the size of your business, just to show like grouped accounts or anything. I feel like I'm talking real accounting speak here, and you're looking at me kind of blankly, which I get, right? If you're not used to looking at this kind of stuff, this can just seem like a little bit, what is she talking about?
Yeah, well, that's why I asked questions. Well, I'm actually just learning there's this guy, and he's got one camera. He doesn't do any camera angle changes, and he just sits in front of a whiteboard talking about calculus, and it's a 45-minute thing, and he gets 20 million views. And I'm actually learning that education is the best way to grow your business. So I do look vacant because I am, but I'm catching up. So the profit loss made sense to me. The chart of accounts, or whatever you called it, is it just like, so it's all the categories to code what things are, where the money is going?
That's most basic form, yes.
Yeah. Am I getting you in trouble with like high level people? What do you?
I'm feeling like accountants and bookkeepers are going to be like listening, but yeah, and it's high level. You are correct. Yeah.
So are we minimizing their expertise right now because then tradies are listening? Oh, is that all they do? Is that why I pay them $5,000 a year? Or
Yeah,
whatever?
no, it's a bit more complex than that. It's not just data entry. Like, have you heard the story of the manufacturing plant that broke down, and they called in the plumber or the guy to fix it, and he had a wee look around and tapped a few places, and then sent them a bill for $1,500, and they're like, "But you were only here for 5 minutes. Why are you sending us this massive bill?" And he's like, "Well," and then he resent the bill saying, "Time spent on the job, X amount of dollars. All the years of learning, of knowing where, so that I knew where to look." So it only took 5 minutes, that much. And it's a bit like that with bookkeeping and accounting as well. Like, there's a whole bunch of knowledge that goes on behind that in order to get to that result. And if you know that, it's fine. Like, you can do it. But I mean, I've had 30 years of experience doing accounts work. So, and And a lot of bookkeepers have similar. We started on the job. And so that's kind of that financial background and working across lots of different clients is how I ended up in working in business coaching, because I learned so much, and I learned on the job, and I asked lots of questions, and I learned a lot about business from looking at accounts and from talking to business owners and to figuring out what makes a business tick.
And we'll give you a good intro at the start. I started doing intros now because you just start the podcast and like, who the hell is this person?
Yeah.
And why are you talking about profit loss? But let's go back to, and the person walked past, as I said.
Yeah.
Okay, so I got the profit loss charters account thing, and then you said something about tracking people that are paying you and how long it takes or something.
Yeah, well, if you've done the work and potentially paid your staff member, but the person who you have invoiced has not paid you, then you've got really bad cash flow. So, which is, cash flow is really important. You can't continue to buy things and to pay your staff or to pay yourself if you haven't got the money to do so. So having good payment terms is a really good idea. It used to be in New Zealand, and it still is to a large degree with big business, that you pay on the 20th of the month following. So having your invoicing up to date is really important for a start. So if you find you're a business owner that gets home late at night and then is too tired to do the invoicing, and you think like you're just banking invoicing basically, then that might be when you need a bookkeeper. But you need to be invoicing as soon as you can. And that's another way that some of these software apps can help. You can do it, if you're on the road, you can do it on the road. You can do it through an app where you invoice straight away. So there's lots of sort of reasons why having technology to help you automate a lot of this stuff and to make it simple can be really helpful.
And you track it, you just, I don't know, there's something in these software things where you've sent it and it's taken 7 days, and then it's got a tally of 20 people at 7 days or whatever.
Yeah, generally in months, like current 1 to 30,
months.
31 to 60.
Get rid of those clients, Jesus. Months to pay you.
No, but I would recommend for most small businesses to have payment terms of 7 days, 7 to 14 days. In this day and age of internet banking, I mean, the 20th of the month following stems from a time when you had to write out a check, and big companies had to, because I used to do accounts payable for a couple of different companies, so that's my background, and we had to load the checks, which were perforated checks. We had to load them in the machine. We had to make sure it lined up properly. Like, it was a big to-do, right? So you didn't want to be doing that, every day. So we would generally do a check run on the 20th, and then you got to mail them all out. But these days with internet banking, you can pay someone really promptly, or you can set up systems like Go Cardless, which will, if you've got regular clients, that will direct debit their account. Or you can set up, you've got invoicing with Visa or credit card payments attached to it. So there's lots of different ways that you can get paid quicker. And for most small businesses, I recommend that your payment terms are 7 to 14 days, somewhere in there, 7 or 14 days generally, because you want to get paid as quick as you can so that you can, you're not out of pocket for too long.
Dude, if a client takes 3 days to pay me, I'm calling their firstborn, eh? Like, what do you mean? So what's this cardless thing? So you're saying, I know how to do auto billing through like Stripe or whatever with a card, but how do you get a direct debit teed up?
So Go Cardless is another one of the add-ons, and it's a payment add-on where it's essentially direct debit. So it would be for clients that you have regularly paying, and they agree, they sign the thing. So when the due date of the invoice comes, they just get it direct debited from their bank account. So it helps with the client not being, not having to worry about paying. They just know it comes out. And obviously you get the invoice before that, so you can query it if there's ever a query. But if it's a monthly fee, for example, then it just comes out. So that's a Xero add-on. I think they might integrate with some other things too, but at least it's Xero.
Is it like textbook? Like when I used to raise money for charities, and can't remember what it was, but like you got to get their credit card, this backup card, something else, just because that will help your likelihood that they'll be able to pay. Like you got the different options. Is there like best practice on how you set up, like how far in advance you send your invoice, or what information you should have? Like, what do you sort of do when you're taking someone on board that's going to pay you money?
In terms of making sure you get paid, is that the question?
Yeah, like do you use Go Cardless more often than not? Do you get their credit card instead of their debit card?
Well, I personally have not got Go Cardless set up, although it's something that I'm looking at doing. I know several of my bookkeeper clients have got Go Cardless set up. There's a whole process that Go Cardless themselves walk you through. They've done all the process so that you just send someone the link and they fill out all of their details, and that's on file with them. And when the invoice is due in Xero, because it's integrated, then the Go Cardless thing connects in and they deduct it, and it all sort of seamlessly integrates between the two.
Yeah, it makes sense. Okay, so is it the same thing again with the dashboard? It's just a report, and it's called receivables report or something? What's it?
So when you say the dashboard, so we'll just stick with Xero because but they're all kind of the same.
Oh, yeah.
There is a bit of a dashboard that would typically give an overview of some of the key metrics of what's happening in the business. But then you usually have a reports menu, which you dive deeper into some of those reports, or that's where you go to. You might favorite it with Xero. You can favorite so it's in your menu, but you have reports that you look at on a regular basis. Some of them are quite customizable, so you can get them to whatever the data is that you're looking for.
Okay, cool. Yeah, maybe we should get a sponsorship deal from Xero at the end of because as soon as I started, I was just like, let's just like the ultimate guide to Xero or whatever as the thing. But okay, so you get the receivables. I forgot the name of what I should call it, but when people pay you,
Yep, that's accounts receivable.
accounts
You
receivable,
receive the money, so you're receiving it. It's accounts receivable.
and then accounts payable. Then,
Accounts payable. Yep.
yeah, I like that. It's good.
Yep.
So what's that? So people you got to pay, is it?
Yeah.
But then
Correct.
you double when you pay them, eh? Instead of the 7 to 14, you'd make it 28 days.
Well, it depends what their payment terms are. You don't get to decide, right? You agree. Generally speaking, they have their terms, and you agree to them, and you pay them on their due date.
Yeah, paying people on time seems to do. Keeping your promises in business seems to do well, I find. So
yeah, and cash flow is one of those things that is really crucial to small business, and so the more that we can keep that money moving around, the better the state of the economy is.
yeah, preach. So accounts payable, is there anything you should think about with that? It's just, I don't know, you're going to have to pay this bill at this point, and you got this amount of money there, and you balance it with that. Like, what should you think about?
So accounts payable is usually made up of either like overheads or expenses, coming back to our basic accounting income and expenses, profit and loss. So it might be made up of supplier materials. It might be made up of contractors or subcontractors. Payables might be, for your rent or your electricity or your insurance, all of those fixed overhead costs. So depending on what that is will depend on when they get paid, how they get paid. A lot of expenses, particularly insurance and the likes, might just be on direct debit as well. So they just come out automatically. Do you understand how you don't really have much concept of how Xero works, do you?
No, I've never looked at it. I don't even know.
So just a very quick overview. So Xero is connected to your bank, but just one way. So you can't pay accounts from Xero to your bank. But whatever happens in your bank comes through as what's called a bank feed into Xero. And it's basically you're just telling Xero what that is or what to do with it. Is that paying a bill that you've entered? Is someone paying you for an invoice? Is that a bank fee? Is it an expense? What to do with that is kind of what happens. And on the dashboard, actually,
Hey, there we go.
well, the dashboard in Xero has all your bank accounts, and it also has some other metrics and up the top as well. You can customize it a little bit, but you click into there, and then that's where you do your reconciling, which is where you tell it, what to do with things.
Reconcile. You get people love these big words, even in finance. That's why I wrote a book. I just wrote over Christmas. I was just like, people should just know how to invest in insurance. So I just wrote it. But
well, people should know if they're in business. This might be a little dig at you.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah, I'll dig away.
They should know finances. They should know what a profit and loss is. They should look at it. They should look at their balance sheet. They should have an understanding of business finances. And we see this quite often as bookkeepers where that might get sort of abdicated. They go, oh, we've got a bookkeeper now, or oh, we've got an accountant now. We don't have to worry about it. But that's never the case, right? The business owner should always be across all aspects of their accounts. They should understand what's happening in their business. Even if they're not the ones doing it, they should understand what's happening in their business. They should get some sort of financial education, even if that's just sitting down with your bookkeeper or your accountant once a month and them running through the numbers and talking to you about what they're seeing in the numbers and what's showing up in the business and what's happening in the business and how might that show up next month or the month after. So yeah, it's always good for a business owner to have a sense of what's happening.
Yeah. Noted. See, just as well came in the nick of time. Well, I've learned a lot. Okay, so, I've actually, most of the business owners I spoke to that got ripped off was exactly that. They didn't have transparency or understanding. Like, for example, someone was telling me they're running a business and someone said, you just focus on promotion, I'll do the operations. And then they were just taking money straight out of the account into theirs, and then they just took off and they had no idea. So they started from nothing again. So how do you actually recognize if your bookkeeper's any good and also if someone's ripping you off?
Yeah, those are big questions. So one of the hats I wear is I'm the Vice President of the Institute of Certified New Zealand Bookkeepers.
Go on, watch out. And you got an award. You can plug that too. Something top 50 in the world or something.
Yeah, Ignition's top 50 women in accounting. Yeah. And the Service to Bookkeeping Award. And I was also 2014 Bookkeeping Trainer of the Year.
You get no board now. I gave you too much room there. But yeah, okay.
I'm multi-award winning.
Yeah.
And I'm also a master bookkeeper. So now you've got me off on a tangent.
Yeah.
I can't remember what
you were talking about how good you were. No, what else? The bookkeepers, how do you know if they're any good?
How do you know if they're any good? So I would recommend that you get a certified bookkeeper. So that's somebody who is ICNZB certified. That means they've passed an assessment that they, have shown competency with bookkeeping. So that's what I would look for firstly. There's a list on the ICNZB website. There's a Find a Bookkeeper list. But aside from that, you might also have an accountant and a bookkeeper working together. It's a really good synergy when you have the business owner, the bookkeeper, and the accountant talking to each other because they're all doing different things in the business. Bookkeepers and accountants should be working really closely together and really well together. So bookkeepers are kind of doing all the day-to-day stuff so that at the end of year, it's really tidy for the accountant to do the end of year taxes, etc. So how to know if anyone's good? If you've got an accountant, then they should be working together and overviewing what's going on. But aside from that, it's often just experience and what they're doing. If they're a member of a professional body like ICNZB, so that they've got people to ask questions and they've got a learning pathway. It's not regulated at this point in New Zealand, although we probably would we like it to be. I don't know. I think there's room for an education pathway on it, which would help small business owners to figure out if someone's any good. But starting with hiring an ICNZB certified bookkeeper would be a really good place to start.
And are you meant to hire a full-time bookkeeper, or when do you need one? Okay, so
No. And that's the benefit of outsourcing this type of work, is because you usually don't need someone full time. And you might, and again, depending on the size of the business and how the business is operating, depends on what sort of service that you need. But outsourced bookkeepers are generally working across multiple different businesses, and you either have an agreement with them that you do a certain amount of work, or you're working based on what's required. But it's beneficial to the business owner because they don't have to provide a desk and a PAYE, and don't have to worry with employment or taxes. They're engaging a business or a bookkeeping business to do that work for them.
yeah, it makes sense at a particular moment. So I'm a big believer in like the compounding return of investing in someone.
Yeah.
Like, do you, if you want to get someone to do it in your business, do you get the admin, or do you hire a bookkeeper with experience and tack on other things that they could do? Or if you wanted to bring it in-house, what should you think about?
Well, if you want to bring it in-house, is different from hiring an outsourced bookkeeper. So, and you're talking about admin versus bookkeeping. So there are some VAs who might do both. But if you're looking for someone, an experienced certified bookkeeper, then you might think about doing that separately. Your bookkeeping is a skill in and of itself. It's not just admin. So if you're looking to get really robust, information and peace of mind that your numbers are accurate, that you can make decisions from that, and that someone is a bookkeeping professional or an accounts professional is helping you with that side of the business, then I would suggest getting a bookkeeper to do that. If you've got admin, well, what is that exactly? Is that answering the phone? Is that doing emails? What is that exactly? Getting a bookkeeper to do that is possibly not the best use of that time. It depends what it is. There's a whole kind of situation at the moment where you've got VAs and quite a wide network of VAs, virtual assistants, and they can offer anything from marketing admin to bookkeeping admin to calendar management kind of thing. So it's a whole raft of things. And then you've got pure bookkeeping professionals who are simply and solely bookkeepers. That's their professional bookkeepers. They are accounts professionals, and that's what they do. And a lot of us also do accounting software consulting in that space because, as you can imagine, we're in clients' work all day, every day. We know the process, we know the software in and out, and so we're in a really good position to know different software, to train people on it, etc. And then you have the accountants, who are the higher level. They're strategic, they're tax specialists, etc. Sometimes bookkeepers might also be tax agents or accountants, and sometimes accountants may have a bookkeeping division. And sometimes VAs might do bookkeeping, and sometimes admin companies might have a bookkeeping division, and sometimes bookkeepers might have an admin division. So there's a little bit of grey area in between all that. But ultimately, it's it's a bit like software. It's not a one size fits all. It's what do you need and who's the best fit for that.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd rather hire someone that just gets G'd up over numbers like every day. Oh, right, what are the numbers? Give me the numbers. Or
Yeah.
as opposed to someone, I got to do the phone and then punch some stuff in.
Yeah, because that's distracting too, right? And you really need someone who can devote focused time to making sure everything's correct without getting interrupted by, non-focusable things.
They're saying the boss saying some stupid idea. So when do you take what stage should you think about a bookkeeper? Like when it's just so painful every night at Saturday you're doing invoices, or when do you know to get a bookkeeper?
Well, ultimately, if it's not the best use of your time or expertise, or if you don't have the expertise, and for a lot of small business owners, it's not the best use of their time. Like, you go into business because you're typically really good at what you do, which is not usually accounting and bookkeeping as well. So having that support as you build the business it can be really good. Now, to start with, you might try and do it yourself. If you've got a little bit of knowledge. You might be able to do it yourself if you haven't got the budget to hire someone. But if you're growing the business, or if you know that you want to start as you mean to continue, and you want to have that financial support as you build the business, so that you've got confidence in the numbers, and you know that at the end of the year your accountant's going to have accurate numbers as well, then and having just someone oversight, what's going on in the business, then as soon as you can, really. There's different, again, not one size does not fit all. Some business owners are perfectly happy to do it themselves, or they might have a partner that does it for them if they're in the business together. In some cases it's not that onerous, but when you get a bit bigger, when you start recognizing that this is actually not the best use of my time, then my time is better spent going out and finding new business, or getting the work, or doing the work. And then you have the confidence that you've got that financial support behind you to actually make sure that invoicing is getting done, make sure that your bills are getting paid on time, make sure that all of the bills and the invoices and all of the costs and expenses of the business are being accurately accounted for and represented, so that when you get your financial reports, it's actually a pretty accurate picture of what's going on in the business. And then potentially someone to help you explain it and sit down with you and just have a chat with you, then that's when. So the answer is it depends. But generally, if that's not the best use of your time, if you didn't go into business to be a bookkeeper, well, we did. We went into business to be a bookkeeper.
Yeah, I'm glad you exist. It's such a beautiful thing. I don't want to do it ever. So the tough thing is, I'm going to hire someone, I won't be able to be any use to them. How do you provide, okay, so you decided, I'm going to get a bookkeeper, I'm going to bring them in-house, and I want them to be happy and have career development. But there's only a limit of hours they can work because there's not much things to account for. What should you do when onboarding a bookkeeper and providing career progression and as well as knowledge?
Well, I think it's not up to you to provide career progression. If you're just hiring would you provide career progression to your accountant?
I probably wouldn't get one in-house, to be honest. But yeah, it's interesting.
But what do you mean by in-house?
Well, I just mean I'd like to, an example is a video editor. I could go to Fiverr and you get that person and I keep paying them. Or I could just say, hey, you're a full-time employee, and I'll pay you. And then I'll also make sure you go to these conferences and learn these different things.
So you're talking about two separate things. You're talking about employing a bookkeeper.
Employing, yeah.
Which only larger businesses would do. Small businesses would just engage a bookkeeping business or a bookkeeper who would just do it as a contracted, as a business. Much like you would have your accountant, you'd have a bookkeeping business doing your bookkeeping. We do it remotely these days, mostly, not exclusively. Sometimes we need to go on site, but mostly we can work all over New Zealand. I've got 3 bookkeepers in my team. None of them are in Auckland with me. They're all across the country, and they work for my clients doing the bookkeeping. So we are the ones who are reconciling the bank accounts. We're making sure that all the expenses and the invoicing is correct, that that things are being coded correctly, so that the end result is reporting that makes sense and is useful for the business owner. But they're not in-house. They're outsourced.
Yeah, okay. So only when you're massive and you got a CFO and then all this board, you turn up to a board meeting so shareholders can tell you nothing about something. So, okay. So we got that. And let's go back to report. Did we miss any things we should be tracking? So we got the accounts payable, accounts receivable.
Look at you know the terms now.
Well, you said I look vacant, so I just challenged my ego. Now, so what else do we, what do we sprinkle? Have we missed anything? What should we put on it?
Well, again, it depends on the business.
Should we just pick a business, just go all in? What's your favorite business to do accounts, to do the reporting for?
Okay, I'll give you an example of a business that we currently do bookkeeping for. And I want to talk about them, but without giving them away as what it is.
Yep.
So they import a particular product.
Yeah.
They have the license for a range of this particular product.
Mm-hmm.
They sell into big box retail, and they also make some of their own product. So they buy the ingredients, they make it up, and then they sell a product. And so for them, they need to know how much revenue they are making on each product, how much revenue, what margin they're making on each customer, like what's their pricing for each customer, because they will have negotiated different rates. And they will need to know how much stock they've got of all of this huge range of products. They also have payroll, so we do their payroll as well, weekly and monthly. I've been to an accountant's meeting with them as well. So we're correctly allocating assets that they buy and the liabilities and the loans that they have. So there's a whole bunch of moving parts with that. Now, she came to me for training on the particular software that she's using and had a couple sessions with me on how to use it. So she wasn't abdicating responsibility, right? She was like, I need to understand this. She already had a pretty good sense of financial information, and then came to the decision that that wasn't the best use of her time
Yeah.
to be doing that.
Yeah.
And said, can you guys just do that? So that's when we took it on. Now she's got some in-house staff that do a certain part of it, like the purchase orders and the managing the stock coming in, etc. And then we take it from there. And we make sure everything's correctly allocated. We make sure the inventory figure is correct each month. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes along with that.
Ah, look at that. Yeah, I think we're playing like bookkeepers just by random, because I just made a list of people and called them, and then we had a lot of accountants, bookkeepers. So you're taking over New Zealand. Just a random sample.
Well, accountants and bookkeepers, we're the backbone of small business. When COVID happened, one of the guys from Xero, I can't remember his name, Mark Bell, I think. No, that's not true. Can't remember his name. Don't put that in there. I don't think
Don't plug Mark. Shout out to some random guy called Mark Bell.
I mean, he made the remark that accountants and bookkeepers have been like the first responders of business in COVID, because we were the ones dealing with businesses who were all of a sudden going, I have to shut my doors, I've got staff to pay, there's this COVID subsidy, what does that mean? So we were the ones on the ground supporting those businesses to stay in business, to recover from COVID, to recover from business. So I think there's research out there, and don't ask me where, but to support the fact that businesses who've got a bookkeeper are more successful. They've just got more support. And definitely they need an accountant for end of year taxes, usually. So bookkeeper, accountant, business owner, that's the dream team combination there.
It will make sense. I mean, it's a horrible example, but like if you want to lose weight, weigh yourself every day. Like if you don't track it, you're not going to get better at it. So if you've got the wrong inputs.
What you track is what improves. You can't improve something if you're not tracking. If you don't know where your starting point is, you can't get to B if you don't know what A is. Preach.
Exactly. See, I'm learning stuff. So, okay.
Whoop, whoop.
You're getting fired up about bookkeeping. Someone's got to, you got my vote. Okay. So payroll, why is that so confusing and weird, and we had to hire full time?
Payroll in New Zealand, one of the most complex payrolls in the world, apparently. So my cousin Di Crawford, she's the president of the ICNZB at the moment. She's actually a payroll expert.
Oh, is that how you got the job?
No. No, but she was one of about 4 people when I started my bookkeeping business that I was like, oh, she's doing it, I could do that too. Cool. And then I saw there was a couple other things that happened at the same time too that kind of led to me starting my own bookkeeping business. But so payroll's totally her expertise when it comes to New Zealand. I used to do payroll in the US, but New Zealand is a whole different kettle of fish. Our Holidays Act is really confusing. It was, and again, hopefully Di, if you're listening, hoping that this is accurate.
Yeah,
so,
call in and complain.
Yeah, from my understanding, our Holidays Act, I can't remember the year that is. I can't remember, but I mean, ultimately, way back in the day, right? People used to work a 40-hour week, and that was it. We didn't even have shops open on the weekend, and so our Holidays Act stems from that time where people's salary and wage conditions were pretty within a narrow band. Nowadays we have shift work, we have variable work patterns, we have, a whole raft of different things, so that figuring out how much someone is entitled to for a day off, whether it's different if it's a public holiday from an annual leave, from a sick day potentially, and figuring out what that is based on a variable work pattern can be tricky. You have to have your wits about you when you're doing payroll in New Zealand. It can be really easy to get wrong, and if you get it wrong, the consequences can be really expensive. So payroll, getting a specialist in to help you with your payroll is a really good idea.
Is that a bookkeeper or a bookkeeper specialist?
Most bookkeepers do payroll as well. If it's really complex payroll, then you might want to get a payroll specialist or a bookkeeper who specializes in payroll. But most bookkeepers do payroll.
Okay, and this is a completely cooked idea, but I want to see if I can pull it off.
Yeah.
It annoys me when someone has to ask me for holidays, because I'm like, I don't have autonomy over your life. I just want to pay you every day, and when you're here, you're doing work. Whether you're not here, you still get paid. Is that possible to do that without going to prison because you didn't pay their holiday pay because you're just paying them in general? Like, how do you make sure you don't end up with they've got 20 weeks of holiday pay due because they never asked for a holiday?
Well, that's why you need a payroll system to help you manage that. Here in New Zealand, we get 4 weeks, is legislated, 4 weeks of annual leave. And that's part of the issue with the complexity of payroll too, is that annual leave is measured in weeks. So how do you figure out if someone's taken 1 day or someone's taken half a day? Like, how much of a week is that kind of thing? So that's part of the complexity. But we get 4 weeks here. So using payroll software, you'd have to, if you had a staff member and they got 4 weeks annual leave, then you'd have to record it as leave and keep track of the fact that they've taken that leave and deduct it from their balance. They get 4 weeks. The rule is they get 4 weeks after they've been with you for 12 months. So nothing, 1 year, they've got 4 weeks, and then they can spend that. They can use that over the coming months. Now, some employers will let you take some of that before you get to a year, like you kind of accrue it. But the legislation says that after a year, then they have 4 weeks available for them to take. And they can take, you have to allow them to take 2 weeks at a time, at least. They can cash up 1 week if you want them, if you let them. So there's a lot. I mean, I don't really want to go too deep into payroll because it's massive. It's a massive subject, but I will just say if you've got a small business owner who is employing someone, then they should have some support, even if it's just someone to ask questions and to make sure they're paying their staff right.
And is that another one you outsource or one you bring in?
Outsource. Yeah.
God, so much outsource.
A bookkeeper can do it, usually. That would be the place to start.
So I want to get in trouble if I don't track it and under, like, do you have to make them take it after 5 years or something, or do they just? Should we stop talking about payroll? Are we getting too deep?
No, you don't. You can insist that they take it. A lot of this too stems back to their employment agreement. You can, I believe, and I'm not entirely sure of the legislation on this, but you can insist that they take some. Because otherwise what happens is it's a liability on your balance sheet effectively, and you just end up, if nobody takes a holiday for 5 years, which would not be good for your employee, for one thing, to work 5 years straight without taking a break. The point is there, I think that's why the 2-week thing is you have to give someone a good break. If they don't use up all their leave, then it just keeps accruing, which means when they do leave, you've got this massive, great big final pay to pay because all of their leave has just been accruing. And if they've got pay rises in that time, then the value of that leave is just going to go higher and higher. So, annual leave is there so that employees are rested and productive, because we're well known to be more productive when we're rested. And, it's part of your culture as a business owner to want your staff to be happy and to be well rested so that they're more productive and happy at work. And so, if you can let them take the 4 weeks over the year, that's the ideal scenario. It's there for a reason.
Well, I wanted them to just be like, hey, Ryan, I'm going to Europe for 6 weeks. And then I'm like, cool, well, and then you pay them. So are you meant to keep money separate for payroll? Like, what should you think about? Like, do you have like a margin of safety or something, or?
Yeah, again, that depends, but it's not a silly idea, especially if you've got quite a high wage cost. I'd be putting money aside for your payroll, your PAYE, every month that you have to deduct wages and pay PAYE, deduct PAYE from the wages. So depending on how big that is, you might want a separate account to keep track of that so that it's there on the 20th when you need to pay it. But your liability, definitely, it depends how big it is. Like if you've just got one staff member and if you've got monthly recurring revenue that can afford to pay that when the time comes, then, you don't necessarily need to put money aside. But if that's getting really big and you know that when they do take that, you're not going to have it, then putting money aside is a really good idea.
Okay, cool. And then last question on this software thing with Xero. Is there anything you would want to add, like when you go into their Xero, you're like, oh, they're doing that thing again. They should be doing it like this. Like, what's a big overview of Xero and the best way to use it and where people make mistakes?
It's a really good question, and there are so many. I think the number one mistake really is just not utilizing it to its fullest and not understanding everything that it could do. So when I do a Xero training with someone, I'll sit down with them and I'll say, tell me about your business. And at the same time, I'm just looking through their Xero file and I'll be like, what, can you tell me what's this? Like, why are you doing that? And then we're like, did you know that there's a much quicker way to do that? Or that should be coded to this and here's why. Or, you're not tracking accounts payable. You're not entering bills, you're just entering off the statement, and therefore you're not getting a true and accurate profitability figure because, when you pay it, it's not necessarily when it was earned, when it was accounted for. So I would suggest getting, no matter if it's Xero, MYOB, Reckon, QuickBooks, no matter what you're using, MoneyWorks, getting...
She plugged that so hard in that episode. But yeah, sorry.
MoneyWorks is great. Yeah, I've never used it, but I know a couple of bookkeepers who love it. So yeah, it's great. But like Xero or MYOB or Reckon, for example, it can seem really overwhelming, especially if you don't have a really good financial expertise yourself. So getting someone in to help you set it up, to understand how your business works and what the information that you need at the back end, like what's the whole point of this, so you get good information, and understanding how that might be set up, and then understanding all the little bits of the software that can make your job easier as a business owner, can be the most efficient way to use it, and can get you the end result that you want. That's probably it. There's plenty of people who are using Xero because, they might have seen an ad from Xero, for example, on Facebook, and they're like, it's so easy, anyone can do it. Well, we've all bookkeepers and accountants have seen a dog's breakfast of a Xero file. So just because it looks easy to do doesn't mean that you can't make a complete mess of it. So having a little bit of training at the front end and having then that person just to call on when anything curly happens, that's such a great investment, because even if you are doing it yourself, then you know that you've had training to do it right, and you know that you've got someone to call on when something happens that you don't know how to fix. And I've got quite a few clients like that where I've trained them on MYOB or Xero, and off they go. They're quite happy to do the day-to-day, and I've trained them well. But then occasionally they'll come back to me and say, hey, this has happened and I don't know how to account for it, or I don't know how to deal with it. Can you either fix up this mess I've made, or can you show me what to do, or can you just do this particular thing? Or, I've bought a vehicle and I've sold another one and I don't know how to do that properly. So getting that upfront expertise to help you set it up, or at least then just to get some training on how to best use it as it specifically pertains to your business. Like, what's the best scenario for you, for your resource of time, for your business? And then you know that you're doing it properly. And then if you decide that even after that you don't want to do it, then you can hire a bookkeeper.
Wow.
You can bring on an outsourced bookkeeper to just do it all for you.
That sounds fun. I would probably just know enough. I'd rather buy other people's time with my money instead of spend my own time. But then once you know enough.
Yeah. I mean, the very first thing I outsourced was my cleaning when I had my bookkeeping business, because, I'd rather be doing accounting than cleaning. And that was a great outsource, because, who wants to do cleaning? I'd rather sit at my desk and do some bookkeeping. And then the very next thing I outsourced was marketing, because I am not a marketing expert, but I recognize the value of marketing. And so it's similar for small businesses. They're not experts in bookkeeping. They don't know what they don't know most of the time. And so bringing in a bookkeeper to help you to do that, or someone to give you training on how to do that, can be just add a huge value to what your understanding of what's happening in your business and your ability to grow from there.
Makes sense. Well, thanks for coming on.
You're welcome.